In this private conversation, you can't even speak about it. So as a young activist who's trying to find places to push black women into both black women's history and women's history, I know your work has gone over a long span of time. I guess we're back to the beginning of the struggle in so many ways. But what would you suggest to me? What would Harriet do when she looks out at what's happening? How do you change things?
Thank you for reminding us that this is really the question. What would happen? And what's one thing that strikes me as you were speaking is that we're at a point where what she would do is almost so unimaginable for us, because she'd be leading people out of prison. But it's just beyond what we, what we can, I think, really imagine about that. So when you really think of what radicals do, and what determined people do, and what people with clarity do, and she did things, physically as well as, and it really is interesting that we sort of start thinking about what she would think instead of what she would do.
The other thing I think, it would be impossible for Harriet Tubman to imagine that there would be black people in the year 2012 who wouldn't get racism. She would be sitting somewhere, like many of us sit, and just be confused. Just literally be confused at a Condoleezza Rice, or we can just name whole, lots of people. Yeah, so there's a world that we are inhabiting right now that we were not prepared for. You cannot make any assumptions about people anymore based on their skin color, based on their class, based on their gender. You can't make those assumptions. So I think Harriet would be bewildered and deeply trying to understand what happened. And then on the other hand, I think she would try to figure out what to do, but it's hard. It's hard to figure out what to do when you are sitting around a group of black folk and they tell you that racism is no longer a problem. You just sit there and you want to, I don't even know what you want to do. You just want to do something, but you are immobilized.
I would respond to that because I think, on the one hand, it's hard to answer the question because I didn't ask the question. It's hard to answer because you can't really speak for historical subjects without living in it. And at the same time, history is useful because history provides an analogy. So in our own time, we're using the analogy of the prison industrial complex. Like that's how long slavery. So that's how we're understanding slavery. But then I think if we're going to understand, well, how would someone like Harriet Tubman, who led in a free so many slaves from that particular system, how does she respond to our issue? I think it does require us to, as you said, we have to think of her in a more complex way. We also have to think of, what were the things that she faced in terms of her challenges and what are the weaknesses. But I also think that when you say that there are some black people who don't understand racism, well, don't forget, the image that I used in the session, she had to motivate slaves. She had to motivate them to leave the plantation. So I think that, if we're confused, yeah, she might be confused too, but then she's like, oh, I'm not talking to this. She doesn't move it. I think that's what we're going to have to deal with in our own time, which is, those people who don't get racism, just like those slaves who actually had to, keep going under the barrel of a gun. Okay? I think we have to deal with not everybody is prepared for liberation and resistance.
What I would like to suggest, do not assume that Harriet is not among us at this time. Of course, she is someone who's for the ages and whose actual life and legacy and reputation are surpassing. So yes, so we agree on that. We don't assume that Harriet is not among us at this time. I have real issues with the perspective that nothing is being done and that there's nothing that we can do and nothing of value. I was thinking when you said, one of you said that if Harriet was alive, she would be leading people out of prison. I was thinking, well, you know, when I went to Cuba, I actually met Assata Shakur. Somebody got her out, you know. I'm telling a lot of truths today. Things I don't usually talk about at the Common Council. But in any event, yeah, I went to Cuba, I met Assata Shakur, and yeah, she got out. That's not the usual, that is not the usual path for people to be released from prison. I've been very involved with New Yorkers for Alternatives to the Death Penalty in the last few years, and actually just finished last week being the interim executive director of New Yorkers for Alternatives to the Death Penalty, which is based here in the Capital Region, but is of course a statewide organization. The abolition of the death penalty across the United States has huge repercussions for the freedom of black and brown people, because that's primarily who's on death row in the United States. Every state where the death penalty falls, we are getting closer to, you know, what needs to be the case. And then we also have people who are proving that people on death row are in prison for life. We have innocence projects that prove that those people didn't do the crime to begin with. So that's getting people out of prison, you know. And what's another way to get people out of prison? Never having them go in. So I always say that my favorite way of dealing with the issue of violence in my community, although I've been very involved with bringing the Chicago ceasefire model to Albany, and we have SNUG, if you're local, SNUG is gun spelled backwards. We have it, but I always say my favorite way to do violence prevention is to get these children out of school. Get them to graduate from high school and then to college, because there's a correlation between academic success and being involved in violent criminal activity. Speaking to the police department, as I often do, as a member of the Common Council, and also as chair of the Public Safety Committee for the City of Albany, through the Common Council, I talk to the police all the time, which blows my mind, needless to say, given my political history. But it's cool, it's fine. Sometimes when I talk to police, you know, sometimes I get called about a crime, and I will ask them, did this young person graduate from high school? And they have the information, they can tell me. The answer is always no. Virtually always no, they did not graduate. So, you know, as I said, there's more than one way to keep people out of prison or get people out of prison. All people who are working on that prison industrial complex, they're in that tradition. As I said, do not assume that Harriet is not among you.